Hey, everybody. Awesome. So I'm just give you a couple seconds so that everyone can get on here. That's really annoying, isn't it? Should I change that? All right. So welcome to evening. I'm just pulling up the chat room in case there's something that you want to say to me. Why don't you just let me know, like always, that you can see and hear me. That would be super, super helpful. So first things first, can I just say congratulations, because we are officially finished the 30-day portion of our sugar detox. And as you know, this is something rather new for me. We are going into a 10-day lifestyle reboot for two reasons. One is I really noticed that this time of year is a little bit challenging for people. We're going to start to get into July, and I don't feel like a lot of people want to be doing a sugar detox into July. I know that for a lot of you, you are going to be continuing this low sugar whole food lifestyle. You just don't want the rigors of having to be so tight around the program. That's my impression. This is how I live my life. If you are, well, first of all, if you missed the webinar from last Friday, it was actually a Facebook Live. I messaged it to you on the Friday email, and it's also on the Facebook page. It was in two parts because I got cut off halfway through. But suffice to say, I just kind of went over the range of options of what this next part of the lifestyle could look for you, so that you can really be thinking consciously about how it is that you want to proceed. The second reason that I'm doing a lifestyle reboot is because a lot of what we talk about in this sugar detox and a lot of the mindset stuff and the heart set stuff and the strategy stuff is really part of the how you will have success in other parts. So I want us to really think about some of the different ways that we could expand going forward. So my intention tonight is to really just start up the whole reboot part so that you understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to go through obviously helping you pick what it is that you might want to be working on in the next 10 days. I want to also talk about some guidelines around creating and cultivating what your ultimate long-term goal would be. Not your 10-year goal, 10-day goal, but your ultimate long-term goal. Maybe that's your 10-year goal. I also want to talk a little bit about the concept of what attitudes, beliefs, and actions would be super helpful for you to have going forward to increase the probability that you achieve your goal. And the last thing that I want to do is when you get off tonight's webinar, I want you to be able to sit down for 15 or 20 minutes and answer some of the questions that we're talking about, and ultimately feel like you have created like a foundation, kind of like the first steps of things that you're going to do going forward over the next 10 days. Okay, so that's the general idea of what we're doing tonight, but I have quite a bit to go through, and I never like to make these mid-program webinars over a half an hour. So I'm going to jump into it. So thank you, Pam. I think that was you, Pam, that says that you can see and hear me. Can I see who else is on tonight? Can you just let me know? Ah, Jan. Hi, Nancy. And I have a few other people joining, I think, in a bit. This is what it's like on Monday night when we're busy. All right? Okay. So some of you have already messaged me and said, I know exactly what I want to work on going forward. And a few of you probably haven't got there yet, frankly, because you either haven't thought about it or because you've just been busy. So these are some of the things. The two things that have kept coming up over and over again, and I knew they would be some people want to start to integrate more exercise, AKA movement, into their lifestyle, which I'm always into that. I think that's a great one. The other one is some people want to turn this whole food, low sugar lifestyle into more of a weight loss program. I understand that as well. But let me give you some more ideas about things that you could be working towards. Now, the obvious things are just what I said, like exercise, movement, almost like the things that we should do, right? But I want to say a lifestyle reboot has to do with creating a life that makes you feel the way you want to feel. So it's not necessarily about numbers on a scale or about how you move your body, although very well could be. It could be drawing and bringing in other things that you feel are lacking in your lifestyle, things that you miss, things that you just frankly crave, things that you want to move towards. Like, for example, the big one I hear from women all the time, and I'm sure this is the same for men, is they want to create more dedicated me time. right? So I know from doing retreats and I know from doing tons of workshops in my Align program that there is a certain amount of guilt that often goes along with carving out time, especially if you're in that season of your life where perhaps you have children or your career is really big right now, or you're really in the building phase of your life, so to speak. I don't know if that's even a great way to say it. There are just so many competing tasks. And maybe, in the midst of all this, you don't feel like you have a lot of extra money. So for you, when you dedicate time or resources towards yourself, oftentimes we feel guilty about it. And I would say not the case at all. I feel like if you want to show up big in your life and give more to the people around you, I think it's really important to give generously to yourself. And I don't just mean go out and buy yourself things. I know that's not what I mean. I mean, you need to fill yourself up in order to prioritize everybody else in your life. At the same time, you need to make sure that you're higher up the food chain in your own life. You cannot give from an empty sense of resources. So, how much time really depends on you. So for some people, that might be, I would just really, really love to have 15 to 20 minutes to 30 minutes a day of time that I can dedicate to me. Not the exercise stuff. You might already have that going on in your lifestyle, or that's not an issue for you. It may be just you feel like you don't have time for you. Do you get to drink your coffee in silence in the morning? Do you have time to journal or sit quietly or go on a walk or meditate or whatever? Do you have time to meet with a friend? Do you have time for hobbies? Do you have time to do the things that fill you up? Now, you would say, really, what does that have to do with a lifestyle reboot? Do you have any idea how important it is to do the things that make you feel the way you want to feel? It's life-changing. And it doesn't necessarily take hours and hours and hours. In fact, it really doesn't. It's about creating more of a sense of self-nurturing and self-nourishing. Okay? So that can look like different things for everybody, but I want to plant that seed for you because I think it's a fantastic goal if in the next 10 days, you started to create a set of habits and rituals that allowed you to have time for you to do the things that you want to do. And you get to decide what that looks like. So other things that you could do is maybe you have a burning idea, a business plan, something that you so desperately want to do, but you just really don't feel like you have the time to put aside to make any forward momentum. So I would say, let's work on that over the next 10 days. Let's start to fuel the fire that allows you to move towards your passion projects. And for you, that could be a business idea or something like that. And I'm always happy to talk about that. Maybe you want to start to fill up yourself creatively. Maybe I could take a grammar class. And in doing so, maybe you were the person who gave up all your hobbies. Somewhere along the line while you were busy adulting, you forgot to feed yourself in that way. So is there something creative that you want to be doing? Is there a hobby that you want to take up? Do you want to learn a new skill? Not just go back to school, although that's a great idea, but also is it perhaps that you want to learn something new and you just haven't made it a priority for yourself? Write a book. I know a lot of people that want to be writing, that it's really important for them and it feels really nurturing for them to be picking up a pen and putting their thoughts out into the world. So whether that's a book or a blog, I know it's really important for me, whether it's dedicated time to even, I don't even know, put things out into the internet in whatever way serves you. But that does take time and energy. And if that's something that you are passionate about and you aren't stoking that fire in any way, that would be something that I think would be worthy of making your lifestyle reboot. Okay? Maybe it is that you want to feed or nurture your relationships in your life, cultivate friendships or deeper, more meaningful friendships, or a better relationship with your partner in life, or a better relationship with yourself. Now, if that's not an important one. So when I say these things about, all these different ideas, I know that it's just serving to open up your perspective. I want you to get really clear on what it is that you would like to do. So I want you to recreate your center and start thinking about that, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is write down number one, hopefully you have a piece of paper with you, is I want you to pick your what. That's the obvious thing, okay? So in the next 10 days, I want you to have one thing that you're focusing on beyond the low sugar whole food lifestyle that you're going to work on. The second thing I want you to do when you think that you have your what is I want you to work on your why. It's really a critical step, and a lot of us sort of just gloss over this point because we feel motivated. But when we miss this strategy of really understanding what our why is behind anything, then we miss the idea of having a strong anchor to come back to. Because let me tell you, motivation is a depletable resource. I can tell you because I used to train for long distance Ironmans, and I made my motivation, I wanted to do an Ironman. That was it. However, 10 months before the Ironman actually is happening and I'm getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go run in 15 below weather, I needed to have a much stronger motivating why beyond I want to one day finish an Ironman. I'm telling you, it's super, super important. When your alarm clock goes off and it's freezing cold, you need to have a very, very strong, compelling why. So what I want you to do is I want you to go through a bit of an exercise. When you have picked your what, the thing that you want to be working on, I want you to ask yourself why it is that you want to do it. So for example, if you wanted to create more movement and exercise in your daily life, then you would ask yourself, why? Why do I want to pick that? And your answer might be something like, because I think it'll make me feel better. The second question that you ask yourself is, why? Why do you think it'll make you feel better? And your answer might be something like, because I'll have more energy. So the next question you ask yourself is, why is that important? I know, funny, right? But just keep going down the chain. So you first start off by saying it'll make you feel better. You ask, why will it make you feel better? Because you'll have more energy. Ask yourself why that's important. And your answer might be something different. It might be, because I'll be able to play with my grandchildren without always having to stop and sit down. And the last question you ask yourself is, why now? Because the reality is a lot of us pick goals over and over and over again. And a lot of times we don't achieve them the way we want to achieve them. So understanding why and getting really clear, and keep asking yourself, almost like an onion, you're just peeling back from one end to the next. And if you ask yourself why now, your answer could be something like, because my grandchildren are 8 and 10, and pretty soon they're probably not going to want to play with me, and I want to have these memories. Now, don't you think that's a far more compelling reason to exercise on the daily? Because you're working towards something like being able to play with your grandchildren, creating the memories and the connection with them a lot more than because I think it'll make me feel better. Okay? So this is a game I play with myself all the time. I'm not kidding you. Now you're getting a scary glimpse into how my brain really works. But these are the things I ask myself. And frankly, these are the questions that I'll often ask people who come into my practice, because I want to know why. I want to know why that's important. I want to know why now, right? Because once I understand what really, hey, Audrey, hi, my sister's on tonight, which is amazing because she's coming in from California, so not so easy. I'm sure you had to hit the highway quick to get home tonight. So that's awesome. Okay, so asking these questions, the why is it important, and why now, helps you get to the critical idea and the critical reason why it's important. And if you picked something that you want to be working on for your lifestyle reboot, and then you get to this part and you start to work back your why, and you realize your why is becoming less and less compelling, I would say pick something else, right? Pick something else that has a more compelling why behind it, because it will help you get really clear on the process of how to make this something that works for you. And then you can just keep recreating this in different things that you do. So pick something that really has some energy behind it, because it'll make a big difference for you. So the first question is pick your what. And the second thing is know your why. And the third thing I want you to do is to acknowledge where you're at. So that's an important perspective. And I don't know, Tony Robbins talks about that. He says something like, successful people are able to clearly see the situation for what it is, not worse than what it is, and not better. when you can clearly see what the situation is and really take a bird's eye look at the reason behind what you're talking about. For example, if you're talking about wanting to exercise more, really acknowledging where you're currently at. I think that's really important. So instead of just jumping through the gates and rushing off towards your goal, taking stock of exactly where you're at. Brene Brown says it best. She says, being clear is kind, being unclear is unkind. Being clear with yourself is really important. And when you're taking that overview of exactly where you're at, the intention is not to beat yourself up about. You're not unpacking years and years of stories and information about why you've achieved it or haven't achieved it or you never achieve it or any of those things. You're just looking at it, almost like from a very logical perspective. You're looking at the landscape and of acknowledging exactly where you're at. That is important from the perspective that if you are, for example, if you were going to renovate your house, you wouldn't just go in and start to build on top of where you currently are. You would sit there and you would measure and you would take stock of it and you would look at the totality of everything so that when you go in and you start building from there, you're building on a foundation that makes sense. I hope that makes sense to you, but I think it's really important to just pause and do some of these foundational elements before you just start moving forward, okay? And the other thing that I want you to do after you've really clearly taken stock of where you're at is I want you to also decide where you want to be in the long term. Now, I know this is a 10-day reboot. I'm aware. It's not a lot of time, is it? However, if you do it right and you spend the time with high level of consciousness and acknowledgement, you can make a massive change going forward. A lot of times it's the decision about what you're doing and how you're going to take stock of it and all the steps that you're going to do and what attitudes and beliefs you're going to bring to the table as you tackle your goal that actually allows you to make it a long-term sustainable project. And that's what's most important. It's like the lifestyle, it's like the sugar detox. If I just told you exactly what to eat, here, eat this for lunch, here, eat this for breakfast, here, eat this for dinner, like almost like when you decide you're going to do one of those detox with the shakes, it doesn't actually teach you the understanding of what it is that food's doing in your body and how it's being. It's just telling you to do something. But when you understand how to read a label and you understand how to put foods together and you understand a better understanding of how food acts in your body, and then you create a plan, for example, a meal plan that's working for you in the life that you're working, what does that do? It creates a higher level of success, doesn't it? That's what you're going to do here. You're going to take some time to create the foundation so that whatever goal you slot into it, it has a much higher level probability of actually attaining it. And attaining it and feeling the way you want to feel. Because when you backed up and you got really clear about your why and you went through all of it, by the time you got to the end, if that last reason of why now was compelling to you, chances are that's a goal that you're going to stick with, okay? So decide where you want to be in the long term. You're obviously not going to be achieving that in the 10 days we're doing the program, but the difference between where you are and where you want to be is really important. And even though you may not know all the steps that get you from where you are to where you want to be, the point is that you want to have a clear vision of where you want to be. Being able to visualize it helps in the attaining of it, right? So a lot of times I'll say to people, for example, if someone comes to me and they say, I really need a new job. And I'm like, oh, what kind of job do you want to get? I don't know. I don't know where I want to work. I don't want to. And I go, do you know anything about what you want? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, why don't you describe it to me? I'm like, what kind of hours do you want to work? Well, in my industry, I'm like, I didn't ask you that. I asked you, what kind of hours would you want to work? Well, I want to be done by 3 o'clock and I want to start at 8 o'clock in the morning. How far away do you want to live from home? Or do you want to work from home? Well, I want it to be under 15 minutes. Well, what kind of pay do you want to be in? Well, I want to make $32 an hour to $35 an hour. And you just start creating and cultivating what it is that your long-term goal looks like. What kind of work do you want to do? I don't know. Well, how do you want to feel at your work? Well, I want to be bright and airy. Do you want to work with one people? Do you want to work with a team? Do you want to work behind the scenes? Do you want to work at the front? And just start building the construct of whatever your long-term vision is. Let me just simplify it and say, imagine if your goal was, I want to exercise more. And I said to you, well, in the long term, what do you want that to look like? Maybe your answer would be, I want to be able to move my body the way I want to. I want to feel like I'm strong in it. That when I stand in the seat of my being, I feel strong. Like, for lack of better, I didn't say skinny, although someone else might say that. I didn't say that I want to be a certain weight or even lift a certain weight. It's just that you want to feel a certain way. So I say to you, how do you want to feel in the attainment of your goal? So spend some time, and maybe that's with a piece of paper and a marker or something like that, and write down as many details of where you want to be in the long-term vision of whatever goal it is that you take for yourself, okay? And ask yourself, how do you want to feel? The reason why it's really important to understand how you want to feel is when we set goals, we typically set goals because we believe the achievement of the goal is going to make us feel a certain way. Now, when we just assume that it's going to feel a certain way, for example, we say that we want to lose weight because it's going to make us feel a certain way, people can lose weight and they don't feel a certain way. And that's because that goal wasn't in alignment. So I want you to really spend a lot of time asking yourself how you want to feel at the attainment of the goal, right? And ask yourself if you believe that goal is truly going to make you feel the way you're actually wanting to feel. So spend some time in the visualization of it. Have some fun with it. You may have no clue how you're going to get from where you are to where you're going to be. And I'm going to tell you right now, don't worry about that. Because all you need to be able to do, and we'll work with this, is to know the next best step going forward, okay? You're never going to know the entire journey of how you're going to get somewhere. And I can tell you, I take on the craziest things in my life at times, and I never, ever know exactly how I'm going to get from exactly where I am to exactly where I want to go. I know I have a really good sense of what that is that I want, what it feels like, on some level, what it looks like. I imagine myself doing it. I imagine myself in the attainment of it. And then I think of what are the next couple of steps that seem like the right thing to do. And part of that is trusting that once you take that step, the next step appears and the next best decision. And here's the thing, you can always shift and pivot as you go, okay? So you don't need to know all the steps, just leave that up to the universe and everything else that's gonna come your way. And that's not an airy-fairy thing, by the way. You're never gonna know all the things that you need to do to get from where you are to where you want to be. That's where there's accountability, that's where there's mentorship, that's why there's learning. These are all things that you can develop as you go along the way, okay? So after you decide where you want to be in the long term, then we're gonna start to work on creating the first steps, okay? Here's the thing. You want to be able to create some habits that are solid in getting you to move towards whatever your goal is, right? Remember how we talked about motivation is a depletable resource. And here's the thing around this. It's really important when you're picking your goal and how you're going to achieve it, that you really are aware of you, right? So people will ask me this all the time in practice. They'll say, what kind of exercise should I do? I'm like, what do you mean, what kind of exercise should you do? Well, what's the best exercise to do? I'm like, well, what do you like to do? Because frankly, it doesn't really matter what the best exercise is. If there's no energy for you behind it, you don't really like it, what do you think the probability is that you're actually going to want to do it? So the best exercise is the one that's actually going to get you out there exercising and moving your body. And I use that as an obvious example because we can all relate to it. So I think that it's really important to know yourself. So don't set yourself up for failure right out of the blocks by picking something or even picking a plan around something that doesn't even remotely resonate with you. If you are a die-hard evening person and you tell yourself you're going to get up every single day at 5 o'clock and go run 10K at this track, okay, maybe you will. I'm going to ask you, is that really the best way for you to do it? I mean, is that really ultimately going to work for you in the long term? Now, I'm not a big fan of going to run 10K at 10 o'clock at night, but the point is what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the next person. It's the same as how you move through sugar detox. It's important on some level that you take the information and you massage it according to your life. So plan for success by picking things that actually resonate with you, okay? And you only need to know the next step that you're going to do. So you want to create a sustainable, somewhat realistic plan for yourself. So going forward, you're not going to make a plan all the way to the long term. You would probably make a plan at least going 21 days. I think 21-day increments is really important. If you're better with 30 or you're better with 40, that's fine. What I love about saying you're going to be doing something for 21 days is 21 days is not so incredibly overwhelming that right off the bat, you're like, I'm not doing it. 21 days is something like, I can do something for 21 days. My dog is growling at my Buddha in the corner. Hey. I tell you, this dog just sits here and says nothing. The minute that I go ahead and get on these webinars, then he just starts running around and going from there. All right, so I want you to get out a calendar or a whiteboard or something that you can start to draw on, and I want you to start to create the first steps. So let me give you an example around something like exercise. So if you're currently not exercising, like it's not a regular thing for you, you have a hard time getting out there, then I want you to make, for example, a 21-day plan. And I want you to be realistic. So the ultimate long-term plan may be that you build on it, you start doing other things, you start doing a lot more cross-training, your distances start to increase and so on. But what I want you to do is I want you to create something that is going to become sustainable for you. For example, if you want to really create a meditation practice for yourself, and right out of the gate you say, I'm going to meditate for 45 minutes, and then I'm going to go to 48 minutes the second day, and I'm going to go to 52 minutes the third day, I would ask you if that's really sustainable. So I want you to make your goal something that you're reaching a bit towards, but I don't want you to make it so far beyond yourself that it becomes really, really hard to sustain. So for the next 10 days, I want it to be positively affirming. So pick something that works for you in that way. So whatever it is, and I'll give you some examples in an upcoming email, I want you to take a calendar and I want you to start to really acknowledge where you're at. So if currently right now, walking or jogging even, or whatever your goal is, for 10 minutes is almost beyond for you, then maybe what you're going to do is you're going to create a program where you walk for a minute and you jog for a minute, and you walk for a minute and you jog for a minute. Or maybe you walk for 5 minutes and you jog for a minute. And you do that for 3 cycles so that you're out moving your body for 15 minutes a day. And whatever you do, you don't have to increase the increments of the things that you're talking about day after day after day. All right? So that's when you're looking at how is it that I'm going to build the plan up, I want you to do it in small, sustainable increments. And it is okay, for example, if you're thinking of it that way, to also change what you're doing. So for example, if you're talking about movement, maybe you have 2 or 3 days where you are committing to maybe the running portion, but then maybe you're doing a stretching program for day 4, or you have a day of rest somewhere else, or maybe you're adding in some sit-ups or some squats or something like that. You know what you want to do, and you know what you're committed to doing. So I want you to start to build that in a way that feels good to you, okay? Pick a time of day that you're going to do it. Pick a level that you're going to do it at. If, for example, your goal is something about creating more me time or whatnot, then I want you to commit to a certain amount of time. And then I want you to put it in your schedule like an alarm clock. And you're going to act like it's an appointment with yourself. And everything else you do in your life, you are going to schedule outside of this time that you put aside for yourself. Okay, so the timing's really important, and how long you do it for is also really important. And then also deciding to do it in such a way that is positively affirming for you. Okay, so those are just some ideas about how you're going to create some first steps. What I want you to do at the end of this tonight is I would love it if you want to give us some details about what it is that you're going to choose. Okay, because once I have a good sense of what it is that people are choosing, then I can start to build some examples. I can start to build some support around that, as opposed to doing what I am tonight, which is kind of speaking in more of a general sense. Okay, does that make sense? Everyone put their hand up. Okay, so once you do that, I want you to be really clear that there's some good energy around it for yourself. And then I want you to kind of go to the other side, which is I want you to make a plan for what you're going to do when your motivation wanes, or you feel like you've fallen off track, or what have, when you go off track. So like we talk about in the sugar detox, when we said, it's not a matter of going, if you're going to do it, if you're going to fall off the wagon, really the question is, when are you going to? Because things come up, schedules are busy. Sometimes we assume that we're going to have time to do something and then we can't. Maybe we get sidetracked with a little bit of an injury or whatever. Our schedule doesn't allow it. These things are always going to happen. And it's not so much, you don't want them to be sort of hitting you off guard. You want to be able to have a plan for how you're going to manage it. So with food, we talked about it, if you have an off meal, if you have an off day, if you have an off weekend, it just is what it is. And the next day, and the next time, the next moment that you have a choice, you just make a better choice. It's the same thing with this. When you have a day where it doesn't go the way you want it to, that's fine. What I would love you to do is to deconstruct your days. Again, we talked about this in the program, and I think it's a really valuable resource to do, and it's a really great strategy, which is that at the end of each day, take stock of how your day went. So in the case of what we were doing before is, ask yourself what your energy was like, how you felt today. Were you hungry? Did you feel like you were prepared? Did you feel, when did you get up? When did you go to bed? Who did you spend your energy with? All of these kinds of things, so you get a really good sense of the things that are working for you. And the same thing when you don't have a day that goes the way you want it. Take stock of it. Ask yourself all the same questions and check in and just see, because like success leaves clues, so are there going to be clues to the days that aren't working for us. And it's the same thing with any new goal. Just constantly taking stock and noticing, having more sense of consciousness around how that goal is unfolding as you start moving forward. And the thing to focus on is not just the attainment of the goal, it's to create the habit and the ritual in your lifestyle that allows it to become something where you're not having to be so mindful of it. So let me tell you what I do with exercise, for example. I put all of my exercise in my phone. I actually go in my calendar. So I will start actually with it on paper, and I have one of those big mom calendars that you get from Costco, and I write a lot of our big time commitments on it. Maybe something that's really big that's going on with my kids that I need to be aware of. And of course I know when I work, and before anything else starts to go into the schedule, I go through and I start slotting in how I'm going to move my body. Now, there are days when I have tons of flexibility, and those are days that I can go to a yoga class. And there's days where I'm tight. So that's the day I might do a home workout, where I go for a jog in my community or whatever it is that I'm going to do. But the way I create the movement might be things that are very structured, or they might be very unstructured. In other words, as the teapot is boiling, as the hot water is boiling, I'm sitting there doing plank, or I'm doing squats, or I'm stretching during commercials of something that I'm doing with my family or what have you. Really think outside the box. If your commitment is movement, then ask yourself, what are the things that really work for you specifically? So, as we start to go forward with this, I want you to ask yourself, what are you going to do when you get off track? What is the attitude that you're going to have with yourself? How are you going to approach it? And what I would say to anybody is, I think it's really important to be clear with yourself, meaning you want to be your own head coach and butt kicker, so to speak. In other words, you don't want to tell yourself lies and living off excuses, but at the same time, you also want to be the soft place to land for yourself. So understand, that not always we need to be hard on ourselves. Sometimes what we need to be is the opposite, is to be incredibly loving, supporting, and nurturing. And asking yourself, I can't do that today, but what can I do, right? Because we all have the same amount of time in a day, but we all choose to spend our time differently. So it isn't so much about I never have time, it's we're making choices with our time that is resulting in how much time we currently have. So I would say things like, how much time do you spend scrolling on the internet or doing things like that? Because that's time that you can pull back. And when you have something that you really want to be doing with that time, you'll be more you'll probably be more apt to use it. Okay? So if you find along the course of your plan that whatever it is that you started to work with isn't working for you, not necessarily the goal, but the way you're approaching the goal, then I would say don't abandon it. First, ask yourself if there are key shifts that you want to make. Sometimes it's just a matter of a 5% shift, right? Just changing the trajectory a little bit that ultimately will make it much more sustainable and still get you to your goal. Okay, so when it's not working, you're deconstructing your days and it's just not working for you, don't abandon, just wait. You just want to shift, maybe look at the different aspects of how you're dealing with it. Okay? All right, almost the last part. I want you to ask yourself what kind of person that you need to be to increase the probability that you're going to achieve what it is that you're setting for yourself. So what attitude, and I just touched on this already, but what attitude, what beliefs about yourself, and what actions can you take that will increase the probability of you having success? And I really think that's a great question to ask you. Ask yourself. Pull out a piece of paper and I will write these questions down for you in your email that you're getting. But I want you to be clear on that, because for a lot of us, we've done some of the goals, or we've attempted to achieve some of the goals that we are putting out before, and we didn't get them. So what needs to be different this time? Is it your heart set and your mindset? Is it your strategy? Have you ever done something like you decide that you want to be more fit, that you want to move more or exercise more in your lifestyle? So you give yourself some crazy plan, like you're going to go to the gym 6 days a week for 75 minutes. Now, for you, going to the gym 6 days a week for 75 minutes might work great. Let's talk about knowing thyself. I know that doesn't work for me. So, if that didn't work for you before, but now you're adopting the same strategy, I would say to yourself, do you have a different strategy? Because that probably wasn't working for you. So what else do you think will work for you? In other words, you can't be doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Don't pick your workout friend as the friend who hates working out even more than you do. The chance that that person is going to help you get to your goal is slim to none. You can always tell when I do webinars after speaking all day in my practice. Who's kidding who? I probably speak like this all the time. I'm always fumbling over my words. All right, so you can't do the same thing over and over and expect different results. You really want to ask yourself if the choices that you're making as you go forward are the ones that are going to increase the probability that you're going to achieve your goal. Okay, so if you know you're the person who really fibs to yourself, who isn't truthful with yourself, pull it up. You need to be more of the cheerleader for yourself. But if you're the person that the minute you step off the achievement towards your goal, that you're so incredibly hard on yourself, that your self-talk just starts hammering away on who you are, then what you're going to want to do is be conscious to the fact that you're like that with yourself, and you want to be the most loving, nurturing person possible. Okay? So you want to find the balance between the two. So just reflect on that. What are the attitudes, the beliefs, and the actions that will increase the probability of my success? Okay? All right. So you have a few things to do. I want you to, my recommendation would be, although we're working for 10 days together, we're setting the foundation for the ultimate achievement of a long-term goal. That's something that is long-term and sustainable. But I want you to start with really hammering out a 21-day plan for yourself. Now, for some of you, this is probably really easy. For other people, this might be more complicated, especially if I didn't use what you are going towards as an example. So I want you to make it measurable on some level. I want you to make an incremental build, and I want that to fit in to your schedule in a way that makes sense to you. Okay? So that's your homework. All right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop on the Facebook page later tonight, and I'm going to jot those questions down for you so that you can go through the process. Now, maybe this is enough for you tonight. After all, you were just on here for 35 minutes with me, and that's fine. You can put it aside. If you get some time for yourself, in other words, carve out some time for yourself, tomorrow maybe put 20 to 30 minutes aside for yourself so you can really start to create pen to paper, a plan for yourself in the way that feels good to you. If this doesn't make sense to you, if this is difficult for you, if this is outside your wheelhouse and you're not sure where to start, I want you to reach out to me. I am happy to jump on a quick Zoom call with you or work more specifically on the thing or things that you're trying to increase in your life. Okay? I hope that was helpful. I'm not sure if it was, but I'm hoping it was. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end this. You're also going to get the video replay later on tomorrow morning, and you can go from there. All right, so congratulations, everyone. You're welcome, Catherine. Very helpful. Fantastic. So I look forward to hearing what it is that you're going to be taking on in your lifestyle reboot and helping you with that. All right, so get active on the Facebook page because I think it will be super helpful and fun for us to work together on this. Okay, have a good night, everybody.